There's another story coming right up, and you can always learn more about Theodore Tugboat on the internet. Find us through PBS Online.
Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Voda, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Hello. Look what Rodney lent me. It's a safety flashlight. I love safety flashlights. They're so powerful. Watch, and I'll show you how it works. Just let me turn out the light so you can see it better. Yeah, you just push this button here. You just push that, and you just push the button. This isn't working. I wonder why. It must need new batteries. I'll go tell Rodney. Or maybe I shouldn't. I remember when Theodore learned a more helpful thing to do. Let me tell you about it.
Theodore had just dropped off some supplies at Cayley's Cove when he noticed a lifeboat adrift along the shore. That looks like Emily's, he said to himself. Theodore floated closer for a better look. It is Emily's, he realized. And it looks like it got knocked against the rocks. Theodore circled the little lifeboat. Its paint was scratched, and there was a big tear in its cover. A warning whistle went off in Theodore's head. If Emily's lifeboat is damaged, he said to himself, maybe Emily's hurt too. I better go find her and make sure she's okay. Theodore looked around as far as he could see, but there was no sign of Emily anywhere. He didn't know what to do. If he went the wrong way, Emily might not be found for a long time. I'd better go tell the dispatcher, Theodore finally decided. He can call Constance, the Coast Guard vessel, and she'll be able to find Emily. There was no time to waste. Theodore tied onto the lifeboat and headed straight back to the Great Ocean dock. The dispatcher called Constance, the Coast Guard, as soon as he heard Theodore's story. You were smart to come to me right away, he said to Theodore. We want to find Emily as soon as possible. Theodore was very glad he'd done the right thing. Constance, the Coast Guard, whizzed up. Theodore found Emily's lifeboat floating outside Cayley's Cove, the dispatcher explained. We need you to make sure Emily is not hurt. Right away, said Constance. Before she raced off, she turned to Theodore. Thanks for telling us about Emily, Theodore, she said. You've been a big help. Theodore beamed inside and out. He liked being helpful. It made him feel proud and important. Maybe I'll get a big shiny medal, Theodore imagined. Or maybe the dispatcher will make me a special deputy tug in charge of rescue operations. Theodore headed off to tell Hank all about his morning's adventures, especially the part where the dispatcher had said how smart he was. Theodore was so wrapped up in his daydream that he didn't notice Northumberland's submarine smack dab in front of him. Theodore swerved out of the way just in time. The submarine didn't budge. He just bobbed dozily in the waves. He's asleep, Theodore said to himself. Northumberland was always falling asleep, but not usually right in the middle of the big harbor. This could cause an accident, Theodore thought. He was just about to wake up Northumberland when he had another idea. I should report this to the dispatcher, Theodore thought. Oh, he'll be glad I went to him first. Well, the dispatcher listened carefully to what Theodore had to say about Northumberland. Did you wake Northumberland up? He asked. No, said Theodore. I came straight here. Thanks for telling me, Theodore, the dispatcher said. But I really think the best thing for you to do is to go back and wake him up yourself right away. We wouldn't want him to cause an accident. Theodore didn't know what to think. He had hoped the dispatcher would call Constance again, like the last time. Suddenly, Theodore's important mission didn't seem very important at all. Then, Theodore had a nicer thought. I guess the dispatcher thinks I can do the job just as well myself, he thought. Well, that made Theodore feel quite helpful and important again. He set off to wake up Northumberland. Northumberland, Theodore called. Northumberland, wake up!
Huh? What?
The sleepy submarine yawned.
Oh, it's you, Theodore.
Oh, I must have just dozed off. No, you've been asleep for a long time, Theodore said. I saw you sleeping, and then I went all the way to the great ocean dock to tell the dispatcher. And then I came all the way back here, and you were still asleep. Northumberland stared at Theodore in surprise. You told the dispatcher I was sleeping? He asked in a grumpy kind of voice. Well, why didn't you just wake me up yourself? I like to report safety problems to the dispatcher right away, Theodore answered proudly. Northumberland didn't stay around to hear any more. He just snorted and disappeared beneath the water. Northumberland sure is grumpy when he wakes up, Theodore said to himself. He sounded as if he was angry with me. Theodore was beginning to feel confused. I was just trying to be helpful, and Northumberland didn't even thank me. Maybe I did something wrong. Well, that made Theodore feel sad. But it wasn't long before a familiar voice cheered him up. Theodore, wait! It was Emily. Theodore raced over to see her. What happened? He asked. Are you all right, Emily? Emily smiled. I'm not hurt at all, she said. The rope to my lifeboat just came loose. I didn't even notice it fell off until I got to Willie's Island. Well, where did Constance find you? Theodore wanted to know. I was way, way out past the harbor looking for my lifeboat, she answered. Now I've got to take it to the repair dock. It's a good thing you told the dispatcher, or my lifeboat would have been really wrecked. Theodore watched Emily leave. Then he had a wonderful idea. I should go and see if there are any other safety problems to report, he decided. Just like a real special deputy. Theodore hadn't gone very far before he saw Digby sailing by. Well, bless my barnacles, the cable ship called out. What are you doing in this part of the puddle? Oh, nothing, Theodore said. Just looking around. One thing Theodore saw when he looked around was that Digby's cable spools were dangerously loose. They could fall off, he said to himself. I better tell that to the dispatcher. Theodore tooted goodbye to Digby and slowly made his way along the harbor. He didn't want to miss anything. All of a sudden, a wave slapped Theodore's side. Out of the way, slowpoke! It was Carla, the cool cabin cruiser, zooming by. Too fast, Theodore thought. The dispatcher will want to know about that, too. A little further on, Theodore saw George and Brunswick about to pull into the fuel dock. George's tow rope looks too long, Theodore noticed. Brunswick could bump into the dock. Theodore added that to his list. Then he turned and headed off to tell the dispatcher. Just that moment, George was turning too, but Theodore was too far away to see that he'd been right about the tow rope. It was too long, and Brunswick bumped smack into the dock. I have a lot of safety violations to report, Theodore announced as soon as he reached the great ocean dock. A lot, the dispatcher said. Oh, yes. Well, let's hear them. Theodore listed all the mistakes he'd seen in the big harbor. And George's tow rope was too long, he was finishing. Brunswick could get hurt. Brunswick did get hurt, an angry voice jumped in. Theodore turned and saw that George had pulled up. He'd heard what Theodore had to say, and he wasn't very happy.
Brunswick lost his bumper,
George stormed on.
and it never would have happened if you'd come to me first instead of the dispatcher.
Theodore didn't feel very helpful anymore. He knew George was right. Theodore had been dreaming about getting a nice shiny medal for helping the dispatcher. Now, all he wanted was to have Brunswick's old bumper back. George was in no mood to talk to him. So Theodore decided to head out into the big harbor alone. He understood now why Northumberland had been so grumpy, and he knew Digby and Carla would be upset with him too. "Everyone's angry with me," he said sadly. Then he looked up and saw a familiar blue hat by Willie's Island. Theodore almost smiled. "Everyone's angry, except Hank." Then he headed off to see his best friend. On the way, Theodore noticed something very wrong. Uh-oh, he thought. Hank left his anchor out again, and it looks like he's caught it on the dock. Yes, Hank was happily pulling away from the dock with no idea that he could soon yank the dock away with him. This time, Theodore didn't even think of telling the dispatcher. He just revved his engine and headed to the dock as fast as he could. "Stop, Hank! Stop!" "Oh, hi, Theodore," Hank said. "I was just on my way to Sandy Beach." "I don't think you're going to make it," Theodore smiled. "Look at your anchor." Hank turned and saw his anchor hooked onto the dock. "Oh, thanks, Theodore," he gasped. "It's a good thing you came along when you did. I could have had a really bad accident." Theodore would have liked to go to Sandy Beach with Hank, but there was something else he had to do. He tooted goodbye, and he set off for the fuel dock. "George? Brunswick?" Theodore called as he arrived. His friends looked up, but they didn't smile. "I'm going to tell the dispatcher," Theodore said.
What have we done wrong now?
George asked in a gruff voice. "Nothing," Theodore answered softly. "I'm going to tell the dispatcher that I'm not going to tell on my friends anymore. I'm going to try helping them first."
Good idea, said George. Maybe you could start by helping us have some fun.
George smiled at his friend.
Do you want to come exploring with Brunswick and me?
Theodore, of course, was very happy to help out.
Theodore learned a very important lesson that day about being helpful. So now, I want to try and do something helpful too. Instead of telling Rodney that he needs new batteries, I'm going to put new ones in myself. Thanks for visiting us here in the Big Harbor. We'll see you all again next time. Now let's put the back on, and we can give it a try. Wow! Look at that! Oh, I can draw pictures in the dark. Oh, let's see if I can do Theodore. There's an eye, and an eye, and a mouth. Well, it kind of looks like Theodore a little bit, don't you think? This eye and an eye and a mouth. Wow!
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Voda, Hank and George and the harbor master too.